my goodness, hello. How are you? It's been so long since I've gotten on here and just sat in front of a camera. I'm not hooking on my mic because I noticed that the audio is actually not that clear when I just clip it on. So maybe we're going to do this interview style. I'm just going to hold on to it. We'll see if the audio is any better, but welcome back to another video here on my channel. My name is Simran Nath, and like I said, it's been so long since I've sat here and actually recorded a video. So much has happened since the last time I recorded, and that's part of the reason why I haven't been able to be as consistent with my content lately, because I've just been caught up in the motions of life, and that happens. And what I think I'm learning right now, the lesson that I'm currently in the thick of, is trying to remain consistent and accountable with myself, even in the midst of trying to accomplish all of these other goals that these personal goals that I've set out for myself, right? Those are personal, being accountable and being consistent is a personal goal as well, but there's also all these other things that are constantly happening in our life, in my life, and trying to maintain that balance. Balance is the theme of 2022. Period. So if you're not following me on Instagram, make sure you do that. My handle is @SimranSnath. I put a poll on my Instagram stories the other day and just asked you all, what you would be interested in hearing about. And a majority of you said you wanted a life update, do a little chit chat. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you the whole rundown on what's been happening these last couple of months or this past month, I guess. And well, it's an update on the last month, but it's been in the works for the last few months. Does that make sense? So there's that. And then also you guys sent in some topics that you wanted my opinions on. So let's get into it. So as you know, in April of this year, or I guess end of March, and officially in April of this year, I quit my job in tech, and I kind of just used that time to figure out what it is that I wanted to do. If you haven't been following along, I was working in tech for the last 2 years, and it was a startup tech company. And if you are in the tech industry, if you've ever worked in a startup environment, it's a lot. You are constantly having to wear multiple different hats. You are you kind of play many different roles when you work in the tech industry, and that can take a number on you. So for me, I was essentially burnt out, and I realized that I wasn't working with purpose. I wasn't working at a company that was aligned with my own personal values. And I realized that working at a value-based, mission-based company is very important to me. So I took time to kind of figure out one, what are my personal values, and what is a mission that I would want to strive towards working as well. And throughout that time, in this exploration, of course, I was still hustling. I was still trying to figure out okay, what is it that I want to do? What is a way that I can make money? And kind of just started my own consulting business. And I do a combination. Ooh, text message. I do a combination of social media management and tech consulting. That's kind of what I've been doing right now. So I freelance, I am a free agent, quote unquote. I am a consultant, and that is kind of what I've been doing these past few months. And, that took a lot of just really getting focused, really getting defined on what it is that I'm good at and what it is that I want to do. And this allowed me to create my own schedule, create my own rates, create my own business essentially. And that's kind of what I've been doing these past couple of months since I quit my job. Now, in the midst of that, a big reason why I quit my job was also because I knew that I needed to do something else. It's I just knew that whatever I was doing, it just wasn't it. It wasn't sitting right with my soul. So I had to figure out okay, what is the next step for me? And that's kind of what I've been up to these last few months in terms of my career. I'm still figuring a lot of things out. I still have a couple of things that I was working on in the background. I'm excited to share, but I won't share yet. And once that happens, once that comes fully into fruition, then I will for sure be sharing that with the world. But I don't believe in sharing things until it's 100% confirmed. And that's also why as you can see, I'm in this is a new background. We're not in my bedroom at home with the green curtains behind me. We are in my new apartment in San Francisco. I recently moved into a studio by myself, and I am in the city. I am by the water. I'm in the marina area in San Francisco. And this has been a legitimate this piece of hair, it's not going down. I think there we go. This has been a goal of mine for so long. Like since I was a child, I remember anytime we would drive into the city, I would always just like, look up at the buildings all around me and be like, oh my God, I want to live here. Like since I was a young girl, I knew I was a city girl. Like I knew that. For the longest time, I always wondered like, okay, is San Francisco the city that I actually want to move into? Or do I want to go to another city? My sister lives in New York. And, if you're going to move into a city, it's like, I feel like New York is like, you have to do it, like go big or go home, right? And my sister definitely took that approach. But I spent the beginning of this year kind of figuring out what it is that I wanted to do. Because like I mentioned, right, like I didn't quit my job until March. So at the beginning of this year, when I was setting out my goals for the entire year, one of the goals that I had is by the end of 2022, I want to be moved out of my parents' home. I want to have my own place. And what my intention was initially was to kind of spend the first half of the year going to a different city every single month and seeing what city resonates with me the most and what city could I kind of call home. Because as we know, like California is expensive, San Francisco is expensive as hell. So I was like, okay, what are we gonna do? Like, how can we make this work for myself? Through that, like, I spent January in New York with my sister. I went to Chicago in February, and I was originally, after that, I wanted to go to Miami, and I wanted to go to Atlanta, and I wanted to go to Austin. Those were like the places that I was thinking about moving to, all like, away from California. But obviously, like, March came around, and like, my spirit said, girl, it's time to quit your job. And I said, okay. So that's what we did. So what that basically meant was, what was that? March, April, May, June, July, August, September. Okay, so yeah, for the last 6 months, I really focused my effort and my energy on still trying to maintain my goal to move out of my house. And this was actually a question that came up to me in one of the polls. It's just like, oh, what was my apartment hunting search like? And the truth is, like, it's kind of crazy, like, once you start being intentional with a lot of your decisions, like, things just come into alignment with you, and that's kind of what happened with this place. That was my apartment hunting process. Like, I made the decision that, like, okay, I want to move into the city, and then an opportunity came in front of me. That's about as best as I can put it. That came with a lot of intention. It came with a lot of work. Once I kind of had this opportunity in front of me, I knew that there was a bunch of things that I needed to get in order for me, in alignment with me, in order for me to comfortably live here, and in order for me to, like, just be able to, be able to comfortably live in San Francisco. So I went into overdrive, and that's kind of what I spent so much of like July and August doing. Like, yeah, July, August, and September doing was just like fully engrossing into my work, into my bag, like, trying to get like, everything together for myself financially so that once I did make this transition, I would be okay. And that's part of the reason why I haven't been able to be as consistent with my content, because obviously, like, although like I'm not like a corporate employee, I don't work at a company full time, like, I run my own business, right? Like I run my own show. So there's like a lot of things that come with that, in the sense of just like having to adhere to your responsibilities, and like, it's just, that's all it is. So trying to do that, and while trying to build a social presence, or, trying to maintain social media presence, is difficult. And if you find yourself in that same place, like, don't sweat it. Like, there's so many different things that are happening in our life, and there are times when we can be more consistent with things and times when we can't. But I think the only thing that I've learned is, like, don't give up. Don't stop doing something that you like, because at the end of the day, I realized that, like, social media is my hobby. I like doing social media. I don't necessarily think social media is a career path for me, and I think I've come to that conclusion. That could change. I'm not, like, completely canceling it, but, like, I enjoy doing social media, like, and that's something else that's been, like, popping off for me lately, is just like, I started being able to attend events and, go to like being invited to places as a content creator. And that was so cool for me. Like, I've always been a plus one. Like, I've been in like the quote unquote influencer industry. Like, I've seen it, right? Like, I used to work for an influencer firsthand. I've seen all the BTS of it. I have a handful of influencer friends, but it's different when you're invited as a plus one from an influencer versus like, oh no, this invitation is for you. And that happened to me a few times over the summer, and that was so cool for me to just be like, oh my god, like, I got invited to my first event as, I don't want to call myself an influencer. I'm not an influencer, but as a content creator, I have built my social presence enough to be actually invited to these events. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I want to get back to that point, but again, like I said, I have to prioritize what is important to me, and what was important to me at this point was moving into my own space, because that to me was like the next level of, it was just the next step that I needed to take in this level of like this growth journey that I'm on. And I'm so glad that I've now been living in my place for like 2 weeks, and like this, at the end of this week, like I really took a moment yesterday to be like, wow, like this was needed. It's like I needed to like have my own space. I needed to kind of just step away from everything and everyone to create a space that's mine, create a space that feels like me, have that room to really just think about like what it is that I want to do with my career, my life, like, just like all of these things. And that's something else that's been a little bit hard for me to work through, because when you're in the midst of life, like, when you're working, when you're trying to do these, when you're, and this is, I kind of like mentioned this in my Instagram stories the other day, like there are working months and there are movement months, right? And what I meant by that is like working months are the months that, or like is the time that you put behind the scenes. So everything that I kind of just shared with you guys, like those were my working months, right? Like, like me starting my own business, me like, reaching out and cold calling, like, all of these people, me reaching out to like brands, me creating content, me like, constantly putting myself out there. Those are working, that's a working period. Those are working months for me. And movement months is kind of just like the result of those, of the working months, right? So like, movement months is just like when you actually start to see the pieces on the chessboard move, and you start to make those kills, and you start to like, get these things, and you start to like make those accomplishments. So I think that's like really the difference between like working months and movement months. And I think like August and September were major movement months for me. And that's also why, like, I just needed to take time for that. So I'm learning to find that balance between working and movement months, like specifically, like, when I'm in the midst of a movement month, to still be consistent, still be accountable to, my hobbies, and trying to do that. And like, maybe that's like a weird way to do it, like, oh, you're accountable to your hobbies, but like, no, like, you can't always be working. You can't always just be like putting all of your energy into trying to just make money, or trying to like, do these things. Like, you need to take a break. And for me, like, doing stuff like this is taking a break for me. So yeah, I'm glad to be sitting in front of the camera right now. Another major life milestone, movement, whatever, was that I have recently become an American citizen. Okay, I did that with my left hand, sorry. Like, I have recently become an American citizen. And that's huge. That's major. Like, I think that I've been living in this country since I was 6 months old, and anything that I've ever known in my life has been in this country. I've gone to school here my entire life. I've gone to college here. I've worked here. All of my friends, like, the family that I've grown up with my entire life are here. Yeah, like, it's been like a weird thing to, and like, identity is layered within itself, right? Like, being a person of color in this country is always going to be a complex identity to move through. But to know that my voice and my actions can now matter, it's a powerful feeling. So, thank you to my parents. Shout out mom and dad for, making that happen. Because that is like, that is their work. That is something like, that was their decision to come to this country for us. And I'm extremely grateful that it is, one less thing to like worry about, I guess, from my perspective. And that's something that like, and this is another thing, like, for anyone who like reached out to me, like DM'd me, commented on my post, texted me, called me, like congratulated me, like, thank you so much. Like I was so surprised, I guess, by like the amount of support that I received from that. And it meant so much to me. And I was like overwhelmed with like happiness and love by the amount of people that just like reached out to me just to congratulate me for that. So thank you. I appreciate you. So that's kind of been what I've been up to, business, moving, citizen. Got some other things lined up, and that'll come like into fruition soon. I will say I have been in this weird lull period where it's like because I've touched on this like, multiple times in this video, but I don't know if I'm actually like getting to the gist of it, but it's like, I feel like, I've been on this growth journey, and like, 2022, it's been a year for balance, it's been a year for growth for me. And I don't necessarily know what move to make next, if that makes sense. So it's like, and this is another thing, when I share like, pieces of information with you all, or when I share like pieces of advice, or like, things that like I've learned, it's because I've already processed it, and it's because I've like learned from it. And I don't like sharing things that I haven't processed or haven't actually taken the lessons away from. Like, I don't like sharing things when I'm in the midst of a learning or growth period. It's like everything that you guys have seen thus far has been the close of that. And I think like right now I'm going through like another major growth period. So you'll probably see my content shift a little bit. Like, you might see different pieces of content, especially like, now that like I have an apartment. Like, come on, if you guys have actually been following me for as long as, you have, like, because I've been making videos for a very long time, since like college. And in the midst of that, like, of course, like home decor is like something that I really enjoy doing. So, and like, like there's like a little housewife side of me that I like love to bring out once in a while. So we might be seeing her a little bit, aside from the boss bitch side that like, you guys are used to seeing too. So we might transition there a little bit as well. But that's because, when it comes to like the motivational, inspirational, etc., like life advice things, like I think there are a lot of stuff that I'm still currently going through right now and trying to process. So I don't believe in sharing items or sharing advice as I'm processing, because I don't think that's beneficial to anyone. It's not beneficial to me, and it's subpar advice for y'all. Okay, so I asked you guys to, share some questions with me that you're interested about in hearing, and one of the questions that came in is dating in modern times. I do not have a response to that. Like, I'm like, still navigating through that, still learning how that works. I think that if there's anything that I've learned thus far, I'd say know your intentions if you want to start putting yourself out there and dating again, because I do think that if you go out into the dating world with like, no intentions, no expectations, kind of just like, okay, yeah, like it is what it is, whatever, let's see what happens, you might not attract the type of people that you need, want, or are expecting. And I think that's very important. So set your intentions before you start dating, because I think it makes a huge difference. So someone asked me, what are my goals for the last quarter of 2022 and my goals for 2023? So in terms of 2023, I have not yet taken the time to sit down and think about that. I usually do that in December. Like, I always think about my goals, like that last week, like, in between Christmas and New Year, like, we have like those few days where it's kind of just like time does not exist. That's when I use that time to like figure out my goals for the next year. So yeah, TBD, stay tuned. In terms of my goals for like this last quarter, I achieved one of them, which is like, moving into my own place. I think there's a couple of career goals that I want to make. I do want to go back into working full time. For a company. I do want to transition out of like a consultant role and move into a more full-time role. So that is something that I'm working towards between now and the end of the year as well. And honestly, just like enjoying the city, enjoying like the city life. Like, I am so blessed to be living in San Francisco. Like, it is such a beautiful city. It's so much life, and there's just like, every pocket, every corner has a little pocket that you could be doing something in. So just exploring the city, I think that's a personal goal, career moves, professional goal, and kind of growing out or learning the lessons that I'm trying to like, that I'm working through right now. And I don't know what they are, so, but that is a goal. So like spiritual, personal, and professional. That's kind of what I'm working towards, like, between now and the end of the year. Tips on moving out from your parents / being independent. Yeah, just do it. I don't know how else to say that. Like, I will say this, like, I felt so guilty leaving my home. I don't know why. It's something that I wanted. It's something that, like, I prefaced my parents with, and I told them, like, this would be happening, but I still felt extremely guilty. I think it's just, like, an eldest brown daughter thing. I don't know how to explain it other than that. But, if you cannot put your life on pause for other people, that's all I'm going to say. And that comes with anything. It doesn't matter if it comes with like, you wanting to move out, you wanting to travel, you wanting to go to a restaurant like that just opened down the street, but you don't know who to go with. Like, go by yourself. Like, don't put your life on pause for other people. And especially when it comes to major life milestones, so being independent is a practice, and it takes a lot of time and courage for you to build that independence. Independence comes from stepping out of your comfort zone. So the more that you can step out of your comfort zone, do things that don't feel like, something you want to do, like, I think the better you'll get at, just being more independent and kind of navigating that conversation with your family and just like, hey, it's like, time for me to move out. And like, the thing is, it's like a lot of the people who watch my content, you guys are in your 20s, and like, I'm in my mid 20s, right? Like, I'm turning 27 in a few months. And like, when you kind of think about that, 27 is kind of old. I mean, it's not old, don't get me wrong, but 27 is like, that's a mature age. Like, in my head, I 100% should be living on my own at 27, like, I mean, but that's me, right? Like, that's me. So don't think that, like, if you don't think that, then that's fine. Like, don't follow my like thing. But like, the standards that I set for myself meant that, like, okay, by this certain age, at 25, I wanted to be living on my own. At 25, I actually moved back home. So sometimes shit don't work out, right? Okay, this is a long video, I'm talking a lot, but yeah, sometimes shit don't work out, and that's okay. But like I've said this in a previous video before, just because your situation is where it's at now, it doesn't mean that that is your permanent place. That doesn't mean that's where you're going to be forever. And if you do see something different for yourself, work every single day towards creating that reality that you want for yourself. And that's going to require just like, growing some courage to have tough conversations with people, including your family, tough conversations with yourself, tough movements for yourself, but you'll get there. And this actually leads to another question, where it's just like, how do we set boundaries in family and in work? I think those are two totally different things. Like, there are certain things that we can say to our family members that we can't say to our bosses, colleagues, coworkers, and vice versa. But I do think that boundaries solidify once you're able to create boundaries for yourself. So if you're having a boundary issue, like, what are your own personal boundaries that you have trouble working with? Because I think that, like, if we can't set certain standards for ourselves, if we can't set certain boundaries for ourselves, if we're crossing our own boundaries, if we're letting ourselves slide on certain things, if we're not being self-disciplined with ourselves, it's going to be very hard for us to express that to others. And it just comes with being confident in your decision and being firm with, like, with what you want. And of course, like, you cannot control how the other person reacts. You cannot control how your, like, significant other, how your family, how your parents will react to you wanting to do certain things or saying certain things. But like, if you do it from a place of love and kindness and respect, like, if that's in the workplace, I think it can get set across. And I will say this, like, boundaries in the workplace is hard, and it's totally different because boundaries in the workplace comes down to your company culture. So if you have a company culture that does not respect your personal space, does not respect your personal boundaries, then I think that's a deeper conversation to have with yourself on just like, is this the right company for me? Am I in the right place? Am I in an environment that is allowing me to adhere to my own personal values? So I think it's kind of different, but I think, like, surface level, that's kind of my thoughts on there. So somebody wanted to know, like, life updates, struggles, etc. It's so funny. Like, I don't like the word struggle, because I think that if you have this subconscious belief that things are hard, then yeah, it's going to make it hard. And that's not to say that's not to say I haven't struggled, but I will say, like, I think I've made a lot of progress in a short amount of time, and a lot of it just like happened. And it wasn't like, it didn't feel like a struggle. It didn't feel like a strain. It was challenging for sure. I had to step out of my comfort zone constantly. And I think that's what the quote unquote struggle came from. But like, and I kind of don't like, it sounds funny to say this, but I think like the struggle mentality will constantly keep you in this place of struggle. And I think it isn't until we kind of change our narrative around what struggle is and change struggle into growth and into challenges that you'll able to be like, oh, okay, like, so this isn't hard. It just requires me to like ask yourself the tough questions and do the tough work, because of like what you want is on the other side of your self-discipline. Like, does that make sense? Like what you want, the life that you want is on the other side of the things that you don't want to do. And maybe that's what the struggle is, right? Like actually getting yourself to do those things that you don't want to do. But other than that, like, I don't think there's much struggle in my journey thus far. I think that like once I started to become intentional with what I wanted, I was able to align with a lot of the things that I want for myself and that I'm trying to work towards. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of my take on that. Last question that I received was, update on like the apartment and like smooth moving transition. The only thing that I will say is that moving is never fun. I think the best way to go about a smooth moving process is to accept the fact that moving sucks, but do whatever you can to like, make it worthwhile. So I made a list of everything that I had and everything that I needed. And then I'm very meticulous with those things. So like, I created a budget sheet with like everything that, all like big furniture items that I needed, budgeted it out, like found the items that I actually want online and just went about like, purchasing it. And, that's how you can stay accountable with your budget. That's how you can stay accountable to like the things that you need versus not. I know that's not great advice, but I think that's just it. So if I could summarize it, be resourceful with the items that you have, make a list, know what you need and know what you have, and try and stick within budget. And then also like, I would say this, it's like, don't think that you have to, like if you're moving and you like, feel like, oh, I have to get everything, like, my apartment needs to look exactly the way I want it right away. Like, no, it doesn't. Like, you have time to build the space that you want and be intentional about your space. I think that's the biggest thing. Be intentional about everything. That's just my advice for life. Okay. I missed y'all. I hope you liked this video. And if you did, make sure you subscribe. I cannot promise that I'll be back again next week with another video, but I will try, okay? And if not, then I'll see you in a couple weeks. But yeah, take care. I'll see you soon.